Chapter 7. Anyway. Sky stared at the house that Dylan had disappeared into. A small, wood-sided cottage, it couldn't contain more than the basic layout, 2 or 3 little bedrooms, living room, kitchen and bathroom. What is taking him so long? A million bad possibilities ran through her mind. Sky waited in the car as Dylan requested, not because she wanted to, but because she didn't want another argument. He was right when he pointed out, more than once, that he knew what he was doing. She did not. Still, that knowledge didn't stop the tapping of her fingers on the seat as she examined the house again and again for any sign of Dylan. No matter what Dylan's skills, Sky's nerves remained on edge, not only for him but for herself. Now alone in the vehicle, the sunny day seemed less bright as she scanned her surroundings. Are there other sick or infected out there ready to pounce on me if I stray from the car? Sky shivered as she remembered the sick chasing her as she drove away from Colton, the smear of bloody handprints they left on her Jeep. She squinted as she tried to peer through the house windows. Dylan passed by a couple of them a few minutes ago, but after that, nothing. Was there any reason that would justify going up to the home? Even though her stomach fluttered, her hand crept to the truck's door handle. As she touched the smooth chrome handle, Dylan appeared in the doorway. Sky blew out a sigh of relief and flung the truck door open. Dylan raised a palm, telling her to stop. With care, Dylan scanned the woods again. She looked around. He was right, one could have snuck up on Sky as she sat there. She eased the door back closed. She studied the man as he did his job. Her eyes lingered on his tossed black hair, trailed down strong arms showcased in a sky-colored t-shirt with no sleeves, drifted to his trim waist and over his jean-encased legs to his worn, hickory-colored hiking boots and back up again. Dylan's craggy face and blue eyes seemed ever on the alert as if looking for someone or something. In particular, or in general, she wasn't sure. His muscular shoulders were usually tense, ready for action. This stance was such a part of him, it wasn't developed in response to recent events but started in childhood. When Sky first met Dylan, she thought him as a bit more than average height and build, but he seemed so much larger now. The protection he offered made her seem less vulnerable as everything around them fell apart. Dylan gave her and Jessie stability in this unstable world. Tom and Dad are right. Dylan is steady when it came to this sort of thing and can take care of trouble. He can keep us safe. Dylan continued out of the doorway, moved to the side and toward the back of the house searching the area as he went. Her eyes shadowed him. He has that walk, that kind of stride, that makes most women look twice. Once she lost sight of him, her train of thought came to an abrupt halt. Whoa. No. He also has a boiling temper, and a very troubled background. I've already dealt with a man like him before, and it was not good at all. This situation is too complicated, and it's definitely not the right time for this. And anyway. Her mind drifted back to high school graduation, and Craig, her first love. On that day, it seemed all her dreams were coming true. Yes, they were young, but that didn't always have to be a bad thing, her 18-year-old self had reasoned. Her entire being caught up in a warm, fuzzy love bubble. She thought Craig had been too, and maybe he had for a while. But within a year of marriage, the whole thing had fallen apart with a suddenness and ferocity that had shaken Sky to the core, and she couldn't even blame it all on Craig. Sky knew she should be over it, reasoned that she was a mental health professional and should know better than to hang on to it. Sky even racked up the hours with a therapist of her own. The idea of exposing herself to another relationship made Sky uncomfortable. Nowadays, it was rare for her to even find a man attractive enough to glance at twice. Sky swallowed and crossed her arms. Then he comes along. A single, sharp rap on the truck window startled her. Sky glanced up to ocean blue eyes. As her face pinked, she unknowingly raised her hand to her cheek. You okay? Dylan asked her through the glass, his gaze sweeping over her glowing cheeks in uncomfortable demeanor. It was more than her face that blushed now. It felt like it ran through her whole body. Sky looked everywhere but at him. Sky quickly pulled her hand down and opened the door. Yeah, I'm fine. You took a long time, and I was worried. Sky jumped out of the truck as Dylan gave her a confused, prolonged gaze and raised an eyebrow. She shifted her head and ever-reddening face away from him. To her relief, Dylan turned toward the house. As he walked in front of her, Sky tried to keep her gaze off him and on the instructions he gave her about the most important items to scavenge. Dylan turned and looked at her. "Are you listening?" Eyes to the ground, Sky almost bumped into him. "What?" "Yes, canned food, medical supplies." "Why wouldn't I be listening? You usually ain't so quiet. Seems like you always have something to say. You told me not to talk." "Geez, woman." Dylan shook his head. "In the woods. Only in the woods." Dylan put a hand to Sky's back to urge her along as he threw a glance at the tree line. The outline of his hand seemed to flame against her skin even through her shirt, and she scooted forward. Sky rushed through the front door and got to work. At last, Sky regained her composure. She vowed not to look at him like that again and kept her head down, concentrating on what she was doing. Sky followed Dylan's instructions to the letter. She needed to learn from him. He had instincts she didn't have, and her plans required her to pick up as many skills as she could. She was not born to this life like he was, but was starting from scratch, and it left her at a disadvantage. There was a lot of catching up to do. Sky's only deviation from Dylan's instructions was going into a young boy's room. Sky searched through the clothes and saw some Jesse's size. His current wardrobe comprised of what was on his back when they rescued him and another set she badly modified from Dylan's closet. She tried not to think of the young boy these used to belong to as she picked out a few shirts and pants for Jesse. Then she headed to the parents' room and found a few clothes that should work for the men. The wife's clothes were a little tight for her, but Sky found some that worked. She filled a large garbage bag Dylan had brought and dragged it out the door, letting it plop down the stairs. Dylan stood beside the homeowner's two vehicles siphoning gas. At his questioning glance, she said, "Clothes, is that okay?" He gave her a shrug and a nod. As Sky continued to drag the dark bag over to the truck, Dylan tracked her. Sky reached the back of Dylan's vehicle and tried to lift the sack from the top. She only got it halfway up the tailgate. Sky grabbed the sides of it and pulled. Her nails clawed at the plastic bag, creating holes. She pushed her body against it, wedging the bulky bag between her back and the tail of the truck. From there she would roll it up and over. Sky huffed, turned for the final big push and came face to chest with Dylan. Sky stumbled back in surprise. How did the man sneak up on her like that? Dylan grabbed the fat bag before it hit the ground and slung it into the truck bed as if it were weightless, then more carefully, added his 2 gas cans. After watching the shiny, black bag soar up over the red tailgate and plop down onto the ridged flooring, Sky put her hands on her hips, disgusted with herself. "I'm pathetic," she grumbled. "It's heavy." Dylan shrugged. He clearly was trying to make her feel better. "No, I really am. I've never been one to work out much, and desk job. I'm a wimp. I have to get stronger." Even if Dylan hadn't said a word, the up and down gaze he gave her along with his expression informed her he did not find her wanting in any way. "You're just fine," he said. This, on top of her own earlier thoughts, undid all her efforts to compose herself. Once again, her cheeks colored pink. Dylan reassured her. "It'll come. You're livin' different now, you'll get stronger." He gave her one of his rare wide smiles. "Till then, even then, I can be the heavy lifter." He raised and flexed his substantial arm muscles. She laughed, which turned into a giggle. "Oh brother, what's wrong with me? I fall for one of the oldest moves in the book? Me strong man, you little woman?" Her blush deepened. "This is not helping." Sky rushed to her side of the cab and jumped in. She sat so far away from Dylan, she almost hugged the door. When the truck started and her foggy head cleared, she continued to berate herself. She didn't stop until they reached the next house.